Hi, welcome to the video introducing Netlab. Netlab is an environment where you get to log on to multiple computers, and depending on the course you're involved in, you can either investigate Windows 10 even though you don't have it installed on your local computer, or you're going to be able to navigate the ethical hacking curriculum and actually hack into computers that are not on the same network as you. So Netlab gives you a lot of flexibility no matter what computer you're on in the home environment, but you can also access it in the computer lab if you don't have a computer to run Netlab on. Netlab does require the internet, so you must have internet access since it is a website that you actually log into. Now here on the screen I have Netlab 1. Please note that depending on which course you're involved in, you will either be assigned Netlab 1, Netlab 2, or Netlab 3. The main difference is the address, the URL that you get to. So here we see https://netlabve1.flc.losrios.edu. That's really the address that you would type in or click through in Canvas to get to. And if you find yourself in the wrong Netlab, you really just need to change that number. Number 2 will get me to Netlab 2, and number 3 will get me to Netlab 3. So just remember that. Be sure you check the number if you're having trouble logging in. You might be on the wrong Netlab. So the first time you log in, you're going to use your W number without the W. So here I have 106.1904. That's my W number without the W. And then your password is password1. So capital P, lowercase ass, WORD, and the number 1. That is your first password. Now you are going to be asked to change that password as soon as you log in the first time. If you forget your password after you change it, then you need to contact me through Canvas and I can reset your password for you. But please keep in mind that may take up to 24 hours for me to respond, so I advise you to get a password keeper software. And if you don't know what I mean by password keeper, I'm going to bring a few up real quick. So the first one on the screen is Dashlane. You can get to it at dashlane.com. So this is one, and it's a password keeper or a password manager. And this is going to save your passwords in a secure fashion under a very complicated password. So you do have to remember one password, but after that, after you use your very long, complicated password, you are going to be able to get access to the rest of your passwords. It also does a good job not just keeping your passwords, but making sure you're using secure passwords. So please check out Dashlane. The second one is LastPass. And please note that both of these do the same thing, though you might like the interface better on one compared to the other. And both are free initially, though as you want to stuff in more and more passwords, they're going to have an upgrade fee. So please consider using one of those so that way you're not contacting me at 2 in the morning and having to wait 24 hours for me to respond when you just want to get your homework in. Okay, so I'm going back to Netlab 1 and I'm going to click Login. And keep in mind the default password is password1 for the first time that you log in. And notice you see Dashlane popping up right here on my screen. So I'm going to click Cancel. And it's just trying to help me log in. It's also telling me that I have a really weak password, which of course I do. We saw that I had just put the default password in, which was password1. And since I have Dashlane installed, it's going to generate a password for me. So I'm going to click Generate Strong Password. Now, if you do not have Dashlane or FastPass installed, FastPass is just another one. So LastPass is the one that I told you was a good one. If you don't have those installed, of course, you need to come up with a password. Of course, this website is not your bank account, so if you set an easy password, it is not the end of the world, but please keep in mind that if you reuse passwords, that's the way that most people get compromised. So for example, using an easy password here in Netlab and then using that same password for your bank is a big no-no, so don't do that. I've set a hard password, so now I'm going to click Submit. Do I know that password? No, but guess who is saving it for me? That's right, my password manager. All right, so here I see scheduled lab reservations, but I don't want to do that yet. What I want to do is I want to make sure that my settings are correct. So I'm going to click on my W number, and then I'm going to click Settings, and then here I'm going to look under Date and Time and make sure that it says Pacific Time. If this does not say Pacific Time, then you're in for a world of confusion. So please click on Settings and then change it to Pacific Time. You might have to scroll quite a bit, but Pacific Time is what you want to be on because that is the time zone that we are in. If you fail to do this, you'll be reserving time in the wrong time zone and you will be very confused. Next, I'm going to click on New Lab Reservation, the blue button towards the left. And it's going to allow me to select a drop-down, which I'm going to pick Schedule Lab for myself. You also have the Schedule Lab for my team option, but that is only if you're working in a team. So I will click For Myself, and then I will see a list of courses that I am currently enrolled in. If you do not see your course, double check to make sure you're in the right Netlab version. So this is 1. Remember, there's Netlab 2 and Netlab 3 as well. So I see my class here. I'm going to click on it. And then under that class, I'll see a number of Netlabs that I'm currently enrolled in. Now, this is going to differ from class to class. So for this class, I see 5 here, but you may only see 1. It depends on the class. I'm going to click on Network Plus, and remember to follow the instructions under each week to find out which specific lab you are meant to enter. And just as an example, I'm going to look at Lab 1, the OSI model. I'm going to click on the drop-down right by the lab and click Preview Lab. So this is going to allow me to actually see the instructions for the lab before I enter and schedule time. And what I like to do is I like to actually download these and keep them up on a different screen if you have 2 screens at home. If you don't have 2 screens at home, then I generally would, once I'm in the lab, I'm going to open this back up and I'm going to make it so it's at least half of the screen so I can refer to it back and forth. And I will show you how to do that in a second. But I'm going to click Download, and then I'm going to save this. So it's saving to my computer. And then I'm going to dismiss this. Now that I have the instructions saved, I'm going to open them up. And I'm going to drag them over here so we can see that it is a separate item. Alright, so here are the instructions. If you scroll through the instructions, usually you will get a little background on what you will do in the lab. And that is important information. You're also going to get the lab topology. So we're going to see how many computers we actually get access to. So for this lab, we have this Windows machine. We have a Linux firewall machine. We have another Windows machine. And actually, here's a backtrack machine. So that's a Linux machine. Another Windows. So here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We get 5 computers, folks. 5 computers. So that's pretty cool. All right, next I'm going to click on Lab 1, the OSI model. So the blue text is going to allow me to reserve time. Now the biggest mistake that people run into, or the biggest mistake people make in here, is failing to scroll. So here I'm scrolling from top to bottom, but additionally you can scroll from left to right. So oftentimes people will schedule lab time right here in the first 4 pods, and then they'll come in here and they'll see that the lab is full, and they will not scroll to the right to see that there is actually a lot of availability of pods for this lab. Each pod has the ability to be reserved at a specific given time, so that way, like in this specific one, we have 16 pods. So 16 students from this class can be in here at once. So what I'm going to do to schedule time is, right now it's pretty late, it's after 10. I'm going to try to click as close to the red line as possible because I want to schedule lab time right now. And when I do that, I'm going to get a start time and an end time field, and I'm going to change the end time to be a little bit later because I don't want the lab to close right away. So 10 to 11:30, notice it says 10:09. Before I continue, I want you to be sure that you press the submit button to actually schedule that time. And then what we'll do is we'll do a new lab reservation. So let's say we want to do a different lab. And I'm going to go schedule lab for myself. I'm going to pick the correct class. So this time I'm picking a different class, the CISS 300 class. And then I'm going to click on the first lab in that course. And let's say I don't want to schedule lab time tonight. I want some lab time tomorrow. and I'm worried that a classmate might take it before I get a chance to come in here because let's say 9 a.m. is a really popular time. Folks, it's not. The weekends are the most popular times, especially around 10 p.m. So, but let's say I was worried about it, so I wanted to come in here in advance and schedule my lab time. So I would just click in the 9 a.m. area and then go ahead and give myself a little bit of time. Now I picked 1:30 there on purpose. This is actually going to generate an error because you can't schedule 4 hours, over 4 hours of lab time. So let's see what it does if I click submit. Yeah, so the reservation is too long. That's no good. I'm gonna have to change the time. It's defaulting back just 1 hour. That's not long enough. I'm gonna change it to 2 hours and 50 minutes and then click submit. And now it's happy with that. It's taken that. So now I have a reservation for the future. So this is for tomorrow on the screen. So 2 reservations. Once again, you can schedule in the future if you'd wish. You can schedule up to 4 hours usually, not more than 4 hours. And keep in mind that the lab takes a little bit of time to load. So you often want to schedule more time than you think you will need. But by default, an hour is the default, and that is not long enough for most labs. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Enter Lab button to get the lab started. Now remember, the topology is going to be different depending on what lab you're in. With this lab, we have 5 different computers. Some labs you're just going to have 1 computer. And now that I have the topology open, I can click on Content and see the instructions, or I can just open my downloaded file, which is what I like to do, and open up instructions that way. The instructions often also have passwords, usernames, and passwords for each of the computers. So I'm scrolling through here, and here I see under the lab settings page a username and a password for the Windows machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that. Sometimes it will, depending on your computer, let you copy that. So I'm going to send a Control-Alt-Delete. Notice I have to do that through the mouse. So I'm going to click Control-Alt-Delete. And let's see if I can paste that information in there, in the password. It's not letting me do it, so I'm going to have to use the instructions. And the password was password, and that allowed me to log in. And notice I'm getting to the login screen, so I'm going to click Activate, Ask Me Later. Okay, so I'm going to click through there. And notice I actually have a computer desktop right in front of me now. So that is pretty cool, and I can actually open up all of the computers if I want to. So the lab will run through specific instructions on what order to do things in, so be sure you take a look at the lab. And keep in mind that not everything in the lab will work as it is supposed to, and when that happens, generally just document it in your homework and try to troubleshoot it to the best of your ability, but ultimately try to move on if you get stuck and just try to complete the lab as fully as possible. So often labs will have questions buried in the lab. Some homework assignments may ask you to answer those questions and some won't. So be sure you read the homework assignment in Canvas for the specific lab with which you've been assigned. And one last troubleshooting note, sometimes when things don't work, it's best if you power them off and then back on again. And you could do that through the GUI, the graphical user interface, for each machine. So just click the drop down, power off, power on again, and sometimes that will fix it. You could also do that through the status area under action. So power off, power on. You could also undock the computers and have them be separate entities open on your screen, which is kind of cool too. So that's what I just did there. Especially if you're working with 2 machines at the same time. Sometimes if you have a wide screen, this is just a lot more helpful way to navigate the Netlabs. Alright, so what does Netlab do? It provides you virtual machines with which to troubleshoot and learn the systems. It also allows you to perform functions on multiple computers at once, so that way you can essentially have tons of computers at your fingertips, even if you have a very old, slow computer, because it is web-based. So it is not, all of these computers are running somewhere, just not in your house or in the computer lab. Therefore, they're being supported by infrastructure in a environment where they're hopefully being maintained with good air conditioning and everything that they need to run to their best abilities. Okay, everyone, have a good time in Netlab and take full opportunity to utilize all of the tools that are being provided to you. This is a great opportunity for you to explore, and don't feel like you have to stick to the labs. Go through the lab instructions, definitely, but feel free to explore and try different scenarios with the computers that are available to you. You're not going to break them. The worst case scenario is you have to turn them off and turn them back on again. Have fun.